All right, so check out this new way of like color grading in Capture One that we've created here at NBP. With the new sort of ability to save luma range in styles now that Capture One gave us, this has been like nothing short of monumental in terms of my own personal workflow because I can make things a lot quicker. But it also gave me this idea, since they announced it a couple of weeks ago, about how I could create some grading tools that gives you some fast flexibility without setting up too many things. And I want to show you what I'm talking about. So here's a shot that is pretty simple, of course, with a simple gray background, but there's a lot of textures and potential opportunities for some grading or pre-grading here. So let me show you some of the tools that we've created. So over here, we have all these under range styles, color plus luminosity, our whole new set from NBP, all kinds of choices. So let me show you how fast this can work. So let's say I come here and I go subject shadows pink. I'm going to tap that. This is leveraging Capture One's masking capabilities as well as luma range capabilities. And once it sets up the default setting, then we can tweak. So let me show you. So what we've done here is we have the shadows now on the subject are like this pink tone, right? And we can make that very, very strong if we want, but we can make it very subtle. We can go to the luma range itself, which is already set up for shadows, and we can tweak it. Let's say I want slightly less shadows, but a little more blend, right? Not quite into the mid-range too much. Just a nice soft blend. And now I've got pink shadows, and I think that's working pretty good. So let's go. Subject highlights, cyan. Let's see what happens there. We're gonna let that do its little process. And of course, Capture One's process for subject selection is slower or faster, depending on your computer. And I'm also recording a video right now, so it's a little slow, but it's not too bad. So here we have cyan. I'm gonna peg that so you can see that we can go to our luma range, which is already set up for highlights, dial it in exactly where we want, change the opacity until it looks kind of cool. Before and after, see that? Looking kind of nice. How about subject midtones yellow? Let's add some yellow into the mids. We'll let that finish. Give that a second. There we go. And you know, although I'm liking that, I feel like the background being a stark gray is just too much. So let's go ahead and get rid of that one. Let's scroll up and go to our midtones yellow in general. This is going to add a yellow wash over everything. But I can also, once again, click on luma range and see I have different range. I can play with it if I want, get it away from the shadows, get it away from the highlights a little bit. And of course, change the opacity. So there's that. Now, let's see the difference here. We turn all these off. There it is. Nice and clean and color corrected and everything's good. But then we start adding some grading. And now while we're playing with this, we can, of course, right here in our layer palette, we can change opacities until we get something dialed in that we like. We think is kind of good. There we go. Now, of course, we can apply all of these settings to another shot of the same set. So we're going to copy all of those settings. That's Shift-Command-C or Shift-Control-C. Find another image and then Shift-Command or Shift-Control-V and let it do its process, because there's a subject selection to reprocess as well as setting up the luma ranges. And of course, there you go. Beautiful. So from that to that, we already have some creative grading options. And of course, with these layers floating here, changing opacity and changing luma range is a quick way to change the overall feel very, very quickly. So I can go back to my highlights. I can increase the intensity. I can increase the range if I really want. I can really dial this in to some kind of look that's either, you know, less or more for myself. Never mind other layers you can add for more grading if you really, really want. But that is kind of what we created over here. Now, let me give you some other examples of some of the utility tools that we have as well. So let's look through some of these. Now, what we have, let's start up at the top here. We have brighten shadows, which is pretty straightforward, but it isn't. So let me tap that real quick. Because what we're doing is we're not just using, you know, shadow recovery or something like that. We're using actually exposure. And so you can increase that in a nice smooth way if you really need a lot of shadow recovery in a different way using the exposure sort of tool, which is like a whole different sort of algorithm compared to, you know, highlight recovery or shadow recovery or things of that nature or levels. So it's a great way to brighten your shadows using exposure. Very, very powerful. Very, very useful. So let's get rid of that one. Now we also have darken highlights, which is the same thing in reverse. And as you can see, we can take down our highlights using exposure as well, which is powerful. Now you have to do that subtly, of course, because it can look fake really fast, but it's a good way to control some blown out highlights. Okay. We have desaturate shadows, for example. All right. Turn that up really high. You can see that the shadows become more muted. And of course, unlike some of the other functions in Capture One, which is the point of these styles, unlike the other functions in Capture One, if we hit luma range, we can choose what, quote, shadows means. Could say, let's go ahead and hit apply on that. but we're going to get rid of that for now. See, so if you come to like, you know, high dynamic range, there's highlight, shadow, white, and black, and you get what you get in that regard. Okay. If you come down here to the color balance, okay, you have shadow, midtone, and highlight, but you get what you get. You know, that range is what you get. So with these tools, you have the ability to dial in things exactly where you want. So let's just go ahead and go back to like shadows, subject shadows, violet. So you see, now we have a result, but we can decide what the range is. It's completely colorizing all of it with violet, and that's the way it's set up with the style set up. But we can go to Luma range and decide what we consider to be shadows. And since it's already set up to favor the shadows via the style, you're already one step ahead of the game to do some creative options. And of course, between opacity, all right, and the actual Luma range, you can do this stuff fast. And what we've done is we set up sort of the main colors, you know, yellow, violet, red, pink, green, cyan, and blue. And then you can mix and match. But there's also a way to get even more detailed dialing in, if you will. Let me show you. Let's go to midtones yellow on the subject. Okay, so if we come here, how is this happening? How is all this yellow happening? Well, on our color balance tool here on the left, the shadows are pegged to yellow maximum saturation, as are the midtones and the highlights. So obviously you can tweak that if you want. If you want to make your mids a little bit more green, you can. You want to make your mids a little bit more orange, you can. And of course, the reason why we set it up to where shadow, midtone, and highlight all do the colorizing is so you have the full colorizing capability if you wanted that. But you can really dial this in and tweak it exactly how you want. A little more green, a little less opacity, and a little wider band on the mid-range. See that? You can really dial this in. So like I said, all these styles include range functions, whether it's colorizing, whether it's compensation or whatever. This gives us more control than Capture One's normal controls, utilizing other tools like exposure as opposed to just highlight recovery or something like that, but also giving us the control of the Luma range. Now we could do this before, but now we have all these amazing presets or styles, if you will, to get you going fast and create some really creative looks that then you can apply to all of your shots.